Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the second half of the Musical Connections podcast. This is NextIIConnect. I am Zach Snow, and we are going to introduce you to someone who has been in the hip-hop game for 20 years. Started out as a rapper, but is now a hip-hop producer, A&R, and is a creative at heart. And joining us right now is Joshua Parsons, and many of us know him now as simply Parsons. Parsons, how you doing, brother?
I'm great, man. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate this. I love what you guys got going on here for our city. It's really huge for our province. Thank you.
And thank you so much for being so eager to come on this podcast. And thank you for supporting the podcast as well, just from all the artists you guys sent me over the past 98 episodes. It's pretty crazy.
It's huge, man. I'm so happy for you guys. It's awesome. I love the infrastructure you guys got and all the different artists you guys are bringing through. It's huge for our province. So thank you. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, and one thing I really do believe about this show is about building this sector one song at a time and featuring as many artists and industry professionals that I can. So you're the next one on that list, and thanks again for coming on.
Man, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
So for those who don't know much about you, for mainly the general public, because of course I know who you are. I've met you many, many times, and I've dealt with many of your clients. So tell me a little bit about yourself for those who may not know a bit about Parsons.
First and foremost, entrepreneur, creative opportunist, currently owning a cannabis company, and I'm a music producer. So typically, my life is involved with marketing, branding, and music production.
Wonderful. And some of the artists that I believe I featured, Rock Reed is one person that I featured. You've also worked with Baraka, who is making some noise now with Hurricane Music, and Matt Dines is, that's kind of like Matt Dines' baby.
And Dave, yeah.
Dave Shears, obviously. Jay Girl you've worked with as well, Cult Syndicate.
Right.
And I just want to go back to when it all started for you, because you didn't start as a hip-hop producer, but you started as a rapper. But you really were into rap from when you were really young, too. So tell me a little bit about that.
Look, it started out, I grew up in a household, Zach, where it was like a rhythm and blues nightclub every weekend. My dad was a professional musician, and in our household, we were listening to everything from funk, soul, R&B, rhythm and blues, rock and roll, and all the top musicians in Newfoundland or in St. John's would filter and pass through our house. So I'd hear all this music that wasn't typical Newfoundland music. You know, it wasn't like ours traditional, it wasn't Newfoundland traditional music. So I had a love for that and a passion for rhythm and blues and beats and drums at a young age. And so I got a drum set when I was really young, started jamming with all my dad's friends and musicians. And I noticed that all of them were broke. So I thought, these guys are so talented, how are they broke? And I thought to myself, okay, well, if I'm going to do something in the music business and take this passion I have for music and do something creative with it, I had to make sure that I got my business straight, my work ethic up. So it was one of those things for me at a really young age. Like, I fell in love with music, but also the passion to make it and do something with it and make a career of it. So from rock and roll, rhythm and blues, and beats and drums leading me to hearing hip hop, stuff that was coming out of New York, stuff that was coming out of the South, stuff that was coming out of the UK, hip hop, rap music. And I just fell in love with it, man. And when I fell in love with it, I was like, I want to do something with it. And I just knew that I knew that I had a talent for like words and speaking and I knew the cadences from drums and hip hop and in that culture in rap music there's a lot about cadence. And so when we were young we were bored, so me and a couple guys locally we formed like a rap group called ECI with a rapper named Lee Fitz from here. And we formed a little band and we started making tunes, and we had the lead singer of Hey Rosetta,
Tim Baker.
Tim Baker.
No way.
Yeah, as our kind of like band leader, producer, musical influence. So we formed a band and we played shows all around town before we were even legally allowed to perform there. Zach, we used to actually have to get permission slips from our parents.
What?
Yeah, to do shows. And I used to want hip hop to be in our scene so bad that I would just throw our own shows. We'd get permission slips from our parents and speak to these borrowers and convince them that we could pack the place, and we did. And like I said, Tim Baker on the keys and making great sounds and making great songs with Lee Fitz. We had a good little following. We kind of started to like cultivate a scene. And then at this time, I'm still in high school, you know? But I thought to myself, I was like, look, there's nothing really going on here besides what we're doing, and it doesn't seem like it's going to happen for us anytime soon. So I dropped out of high school and I moved to the UK with the intention of getting immersed in the hip hop scene because I just felt like it was an easy entry point.
Yeah, and the UK scene's really known for like its grime scene, and I really only got into the UK scene when Tiny Tempo was really big, and he had like those big hits like "Written in the Stars," "Until I'm Gone," what he did with Wiz Khalifa.
Yeah.
Tiny Tempo's great.
Unreal.
And but I want to talk about some of your influences when it comes to your love of hip hop, because you said you grew up in a household of rock and roll, rhythm and blues, and funk and beats. What were some of those influences, and what were some of like those records in your record collection that you really enjoyed listening to growing up?
It was always like, you know, the James Brown, the Commodores, Sade. There's so many, man. B.B. King, Howlin' Wolf. And if you listen to a lot of early hip hop, a lot of those beats that we heard coming up in the 80s and 90s are direct samples and, you know, interpolations of a lot of those records that I grew up on. So when I started listening to rap, I noticed that a lot of the background music, the beats, the instrumentals were all directly from the stuff that was playing in my household growing up. So for me, I loved sampling. I loved the sound of real instruments opposed to digital instruments. Even though I grew up in the 80s and 90s, we had the, you know, 60s, 70s rock and roll in our house. So my dad had to transition from like a Hammond organ to a keyboard, but I didn't like synthy sounds. So from my influences were directly from like the soul samples from like, you know, the 60s and the 70s that, you know, created that early 90s hip hop.
Yeah, totally. And like you definitely hear that like 90s hip hop, like, and especially when it was coming out in the 90s, especially from the East Coast. You had Biggie Smalls and Nas. You also had the South, like Outkast was really starting to get big there too.
Right.
And he had some really great tunes as well. You said you started rapping in the 90s, and you yourself, Lee Fitz and Tim Baker started that band. What was the hip hop scene like back then?
There was no hip hop scene. We were actually this sounds kind of crazy. This is a bit of a soundbite. But we were the first rappers to hit a stage in St. John's, Newfoundland, since Vanilla Ice came here in the 80s with the Fat Boys. And they performed at a stadium called Memorial Stadium, which is now a grocery store.
Dominion.
Right? It is. But back then, that venue had a lot of concerts come through there, and Vanilla Ice came through. And yeah, we were the first ones to come to do shows since he was here. And so there was nothing going on. People hated hip-hop in Newfoundland. They like pop music because that's what was on the radio, and they like rock and roll, which is on the classic rock stations. So there was no rap music here at all. There was no fashion that was anything outside of what you get at the mall. So, you know, we wanted to emulate rappers and producers and DJs that we would see in magazines, hip hop magazines, and we would dress like these guys, and because we love that fashion, we love that style, and there was. From fashion to music, there was nothing going on within like hip hop, or what you call back then is like urban music per se.
Mm-hmm.
So the scene was dead, and I had to get out of here because I just knew that there was nothing going on. I knew that there was almost like a dead end. No one wanted to. There was no one rapping. It was just us. It was just me and Lee Fitz, and there was a couple other guys like Shiest and Radar, and a couple guys that were coming up. But at that time, we were the only ones, and so by the time I jumped ship and I moved to the UK to pursue this. There was nothing really happening here.
Yeah, like you guys were really one of the first innovators of hip hop here in the province. And no surprise there, because the 90s were like a big time for country music as well. I mean, you had like acts like Kim Stockwell and Davenant Doyle who were dominating the pop genre, the Irish Descendants and Great Big Sea with Trad, Ron Hines and country. You also had a couple of rock acts like Potato Bug.
Wow, you know your stuff, man, 100%. There was a really really dope grunge and alternative scene, you know, and that would play out through like Peace Accord Festival, for example, and we get to see great acts coming through there in Bannerman Park. But like you said, there was these acts that were coming out of here, and the Trues, and there's all kinds of bands that were doing things, but there was that were like semi-successful, and they were starting to blow up, and they had videos out, but they weren't stuff that it wasn't content that we were listening to. We weren't interested in that music, and that was just for a different demographic. So for us, we had to create our own scene, and like I said, I had to get out of here to kind of build my chops and take the knowledge that I had from other places and bring it back here to create the scene.
Mm-hmm. And is that why you moved to the UK? Because you really couldn't get a foothold to develop that rap scene here in St. John's?
100%. I was too young to get like a working visa in the U.S. And I actually moved there before my visa was even even available.
Wow.
Yeah. I went over there with like $120 in a backpack full of clothes, and I came back home with like 2 years of success being behind the scenes, studying people from recording studios to promoters and how they brought in acts and how they kicked off concerts, to watching how DJs performed and rappers performed. And I'd never seen a rapper live besides like Vanilla Ice, like I said. So, besides rap videos or say like a docu on TV about a rap group, you'd see them live. I never really saw a rapper or a DJ live. So when I saw a DJ and I seen them on the turntables, I was like, yo, skip this rapping. I don't want to be in the forefront. I want to be in the back playing the music. And turntables and DJing is a lot like playing the drums. It involves being consistent, and it involves beats, and it involves falling the back. So I fell in love with DJing, and I knew when I was going to come back to St. John's, I was going to get some turntables, I was going to get some vinyl, and I was going to rock out.
Wonderful. Now, I want to stick with some of your influences when it comes to, like the turntables and hip hop itself, because I mentioned a few rappers were blowing up in the 90s, especially like Outkast and Nas, and even like Tupac and like DMX and Ludacris and Snoop Dogg, which actually you've were the official DJ for one of those parties for. But I just want to stick with some of the influences first before we get to talking about some of the people that you opened up for.
For sure.
What influences of rap music did you really like, or you really drawn to?
Well, the sound that I love the most, like for me, is from the East Coast. So we got the Nas, the Wu-Tangs, the Naughty by Nature, the Redman, Jay-Z. These were the sounds that and the Firm, like these are sounds and groups that I loved and I was influenced by. And when I got to the UK and I got to see DJs, the promoters that I work for brought in some really cool DJs. They brought in like A-Track from Montreal. I see DJ Jazzy Jeff. I've seen a lot of DMC champs, and that influenced me huge. I got to see guys that could mix, a little bit of turntablism and then know how to rock a party. And I knew that if I moved back to Newfoundland, I wanted to throw some parties and I wanted to bring in music and I want to shape the scene here by being a DJ and by cultivating whatever room that I could operate in with the right sounds, with the right music. And so for me, that was my influence, is watching these guys that had that mix, not just all scratchy doing tricks behind your back. Like that wasn't me. I wasn't trying to show off. Like I said, I wanted to play in the cut and I want to rock a party. So when I came back to St. John's, I knew that that the type of shows and the type of parties that I would throw would be kind of like similar to what I was used to in these rooms in the UK, these places where it was like almost like so hot and sweaty. There'd be like sweat dripping from the ceiling, and you could literally turn off you could cut the music and have everybody singing along to the song because they know all the words because they're real hip hop heads. So I knew that when I came back here, I knew that there was certain people that wanted to be in certain environments and the right parties. So I started almost like mixing peas in a pot, man. Just trying to put the right girls and the right guys in the same room and play the right music. And then that was my way of introducing music. And I had this back end agenda that when I came back to Newfoundland, not only would I put on Newfoundland artists through me being able to DJ by having them open up for the parties that I was throwing, but I also wanted to promote Canadian music through my sets. Mm-hmm. So I didn't want to just play all American music or all Euro music. I wanted to do something where I could filter in Canadian hip hop, because Canadian hip hop wasn't necessarily mainstream. We had artists like Cardinal and Choclair that, had music videos out per se, but they weren't being played on our radio stations. They were played in, segregated radio markets for urban listeners. Again, you know what I mean? And that term's gone now, but it's one of those things where, like, for me, I want to, like, come back here and really start to play music for other people and introduce the music they've never heard before.
That is amazing, man. Now, of course, you moved back here to St. John's after spending those 2 years in the UK. What are some of the lessons and some of the skills that you took from the UK that you were able to bring back to St. John's?
Great question. There's so many, but one in particular is that there is no such thing as overnight success. I think that if you want to be successful in anything you do, obviously you got to put in the time, you got to put in the hard work. But in the music business especially, you have to grind. And a lot of the times that you're doing work, you don't get paid. And there's no paid internships in this. So you have to, learn from the ground up. And back then, we didn't have the internet. So you couldn't just go on YouTube and Google, how do I become a DJ, or how do I get my music out there? So it was a lot tougher world. So one thing is, like, it doesn't come overnight. There's no such thing as overnight success, and you got to grind, you got to network, and you got to have knowledge about what you do. So that's what I took away from it.
Yeah, and like I would say there is such thing as overnight success, but like there's maybe like a few that may have that overnight success. But for the ones that really, last forever, for those artists that, last forever with all the music that they put out, they weren't successful overnight. They had to grind and work hard and, apply what the lessons that they learned from the places that they've been to become the person that they are today.
Totally.
Now, I just want to go over some of the names that you've opened up for. You were the official after-party DJ and the opening DJ for Snoop Dogg, for Ludacris, for The Game, Lupe Fiasco, Black Eyed Peas CFL After Party, Pretty Insane, and you've also produced and sold mixtapes and manufactured them, and they were featured nationally. And one of your most successful ones was hosted by Kimani Marley.
Yeah, Kimani Marley.
Kimani Marley, okay.
Yeah, it's one of Bob Marley's sons, yeah.
Awesome, and you feature drops from Pharrell, DJ Khaled, Maya, Jordan, and it's pretty nuts.
Listen, man, I got into DJing and knew that there was no way that I would do it unless I did it the way I wanted to do it, which was connect with as many artists I love and respected as possible. I opened up for as many artists and did as much grind work as I possibly could to get my name out there and get in front and around as many people as possible. And when I was a DJ, to get notoriety coming up, you had to do mixtapes. So there was no way you're getting your music out there unless you were signed with a label. So you had to take it to the street, and you had to produce your own CDs, and you had to print them, and you had to go out there and sell them or give them away for free. And if people wanted to know who you were, like promoters or fans, you had to be in the streets with a street team going out there and putting out music. And you couldn't be successful unless your content was original, unless you had features from other artists. So what I would do is I would get, radio style IDs, those within the radio style. So like, this is Justin Timberlake, you're now hanging out with DJ Parsons.
Mm-hmm.
So I would have those kind of filtered in throughout my tapes just to let me some notoriety and give me some clout. And in between the music that I would play. So I'd make these 40-track tapes that were mixed together, and I get different celebrities or artists to host them. So I had one of Bob Marley's sons host them because he was dropping an album called The Jump Off, or I think it was called The Radio Jump Off.
Okay.
And my bad, it was called Radio. And so he was putting out this album, and they needed to promote within Canada, so they reached out to me, and I got him to host this tape that I was doing, and I got to go on tour with him for 3 dates and open up for actually all his after parties. He was on tour with Van Halen. So yeah, man, I've done some fun, exciting projects, and working with the Marleys was probably one of my biggest highlights of my career.
Yeah, wonderful. We can just be here talking all day about the people that you've worked with. But I just want to get your quick thoughts about how on what the hip hop scene is for you right now. Like, what are your thoughts on the current scene, and what organizations like MusicNL and ECMAs can do to help?
I don't know what they could do more than they're already doing. I love what ECMAs and what MusicNL is doing for our province. I think that they have done so much, I think, in the last 5 years that it's allowed so many artists to get some shine, to get out there and to get their name heard. I think that maybe bringing maybe a small festival, maybe doing a small festival, maybe that could be something. I know that they have like Music NL Week, but maybe I think that maybe they could help bring like an actual music festival here, bring some big artists and allow our local artists maybe to open up for them. I'm not sure. I don't know too much about the organization, to be honest. I've never really applied for any of these awards, and I've never looked for funding outside of or through these organizations.
Mm-hmm. Now, of course, you've released recently Smuggler Supreme, and that was a song that you were featured on with JD Era.
That's correct.
So tell me a little bit about Smuggler Supreme.
Smuggler Supreme is a track featuring JD Era. It's streaming on all services right now. We just dropped the Smuggler Supreme video, which we shot in Niagara. It's on YouTube. It's called Parsons from Newfoundland is my YouTube page. And the video is basically representing that 70s, 80s Narcos vibe. I produced the record. The song is based off of some stories from a legendary smuggler from Newfoundland by the name of Brian O'Day. And the video is out now.
Wonderful. And what else is next for you aside from that? Because I believe you're going to be releasing a new album.
It's actually a mixtape. It's like an album. It's a compilation featuring artists from around the world. It's basically a mixtape about the life of Brian O'Day. So it takes you through his life story, through him as a smuggler, and it features soundscapes from all around the world because he smuggled in Southeast Asia, Jamaica, North America. So I put a bunch of artists together on a bunch of different beats, which I produced with my team, the Brawley Boys. And the mixtape is called Smugglers International. We don't have a release date for it, but we're going to continue to release singles and videos until it's ready to go.
And for people who want to find out more about what you're going to be up to next, where can they go?
They can go to my Instagram page, which is Parsons from Newfoundland. You can go to my YouTube page, which is Parsons from Newfoundland, or you can follow me on X, which is Parsons from Newfoundland. And that's where I release all my trailers, teasers, all my info, and so you can follow me.
Well, Parsons, man, there's so much we can talk about, but I do want to get you on again in the future to talk more about it. Once you get that mixtape out, I can probably get you in again.
Thank you. I really appreciate that, Zach.
Joshua Parsons, thank you so much for joining me on NextIIConnect. You have a wonderful day, and congratulations on all your success.
Thank you, man. Congratulations you too as well.
Thank you.